collaboration to me is like the best part of filmmaking. That's what sets it apart from every other art form. And that's why I fell in love with filmmaking, was because I call it a perfect smoothie of the arts.
Right.
You know, it blends everything down together. Filmmaking, that's the best part. And to have that, you need so many different collaborators. And that's the
100%.
best part of the process.
Welcome back to the Corner Talks podcast. I have my good friend here.
How's it going, man? Happy to be back.
No, it shouldn't be about anything. Like, this is one life.
Yep, one life? Like, fucking do it.
My guy.
Like, she just got it. She totally understood it.
20 years old when I started just watching a lot of movies.
And it tells a story. I want to tell a story.
Talented filmmaker and photographer, Derek Delson. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm
Thank
doing
you for
great.
having me on the
Thank you.
show.
Yeah, of course. Derek, it's a true honor having you as a guest on the podcast after having the pleasure of watching 3 of your fantastic and acclaimed short films, including The Cross Universe, Telephone Service, Celluloid Dreams, and Here Today. Each one of these pieces of storytelling immediately captivated me with their brilliantly expressive visuals and emotionally moving cinematic score. Like, that's truly something that stood out to me, and I had to commend you on that. So congrats.
Thank you so much for, like, that is such high praise, and I really, really appreciate it. The scores are incredible. My incredible composer, Luke Columbero, shout out, because he always does so well. Every member of my crew does, and these films wouldn't be made without them. But
That's
your kind
awesome.
words, just thank you so much.
Yeah,
really
no, for
appreciate
sure, for sure. I really respect that you're a humble guy. You remind me a lot like myself. Like, you know that you're talented, but in the same respect, you're still like, I owe it to my team and the people I associate with, because it's a collaborative effort, right? It's not like a one-man show just because you're the director or the writer. So I really admire that quality about you. And, it's amazing that you got a composer on these films, because I actually wanted to ask you, like, was this something you scored through tracks off the internet or like Artlist? That's something I use, but you're telling me that you actually had a composer come onto your films and compose something. So I want to know what that experience was like. Is this like a friend of yours? Is this someone you work with personally, or you reached out to them?
This is a close friend, yeah. His
Okay.
name is Luke, and I met him at Emerson College, where I used to study. I'm on a gap year right now.
Nice.
But when he was at Emerson, he realized that he didn't want to be a filmmaker. Instead, he wanted to be a composer. So now he goes to Berkeley.
Right.
And starting a year and a half ago or so, we started working together. And I think it's been 4 or 5 films he's scored now. And he's just gotten better and better. He's so musically talented. And I've always been obsessed with having a score, an original score. I've used Artlist, I've used Academic Sound, I've used all the royalty, but nothing can compare to an original score. And when I think of my favorite movies, that's what really excites me. That's always been a really big part of enjoying movies to me, is having an incredible score. So to be able to do it at this level is I'm so incredibly blessed and so thankful to Luke.
Yeah, no, of course. Shout out to Luke. And I love that you said nothing comes close to having a human being, like an actual artist behind the composing department, right? Like actually like taking care of the score. I've been blessed myself with Artlist in the sense that it just works for me with my ear. Like it works with the scene. It's evoking the right emotions. But I haven't really gone into that step. I haven't really transitioned to getting a composer on board. I know that'll happen as we increase budgets, or as I maybe be like yourself, be like you and Luke's relationship, where I cultivate a friendship and figure out something from there. But nevertheless, what I'm saying is, soon you come into your own as a filmmaker, right? And I'm sure you've seen how much you've grown and how much now you're delegating as someone that's overseeing an entire project, as opposed to when we first started and we were doing everything on our own. Correct?
Absolutely. It's a little different because I still do films sometimes that are just me, or not just me, but me and a couple of other people. And then I've also done really big crews. So there's a little bit of a contrast. And then sometimes I act in them too. So a completely different and I like all of them, but I prefer I prefer working with a larger crew, because collaboration to me is like the best part of filmmaking. That's what sets it apart from every other art form. And that's why I fell in love with filmmaking, was because I call it a perfect smoothie of the arts.
Right.
It blends everything down together. and I had a hard time saying, oh, like what art do I want to follow? Because I've done so many different artistic things, and I just filmmaking, that's the best part. And to have that, you need so many different collaborators, and that's the
100%.
best part of the process.
Yeah, no, I've been learning that myself. The easy way and the hard way, like I said, I've been blessed in many different ways, but just quite recently, like with this project, Demon, it's coming out soon. I had the opportunity of delegating tasks in the post-production process, right? And the production value has increased, and we were able to, with our budgets, extend help to different kind of people. And thank God for that, because I used to shoot, not only direct, I used to shoot the projects on my own. So I was a cinematographer, and as much as I like that, I'm proud to say, like, I think I have an cinematic eye. It's just such a relief to know that there's someone more talented, someone of more of an expertise that can say, "This is my department. Let me help you. Just tell me your vision." So, yeah, that's what a director does, right? They're a leader, and they have to, embrace the notion of collaboration. And I love what you said. It's like a blended smoothie, because that's why I personally love movies. It's all my favorite art forms in one. So it's like the perfect combination. But if it has to be done right, because if it's not right, we all know where it can go. But if it is done right, like I said, and not to, again, like, inflate your ego or anything like that, but the films that I watched, there was something charming about them. Like you're really showcasing, like, steps of being a great filmmaker.
I really appreciate that, and from watching yours as well, I see the same thing. You have such great work, so
Thank you,
that means
sir.
a lot, and that means a lot coming from you. So
Thank you,
thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Derek. Well, anyway, getting into, like, again, connecting with you, I was deeply impressed and greatly inspired to witness your capabilities of a fellow independent director who's talented enough to transform relatively low budgets and limited resources into high value production, which is what we were just discussing earlier, right? And before we share with the audience your incredible creative process in completing these accomplished short films that we keep discussing, what compelled you to pursue the craft of filmmaking?
It was weird because, like, filmmaking has been a constant throughout my life. It's probably the one thing that's always been constant,
Right.
but it took me a while to discover that. Like, I started, like, I've been an artist since I was born. Like, I was drawing on the walls when I was a kid.
Love
Like,
it.
it's in my bones.
Yeah.
And my family's always supported me. And like I really got into comic books at
Mm,
first. I wanted to be a comic book writer and artist, and then I did professional acting for a bit, and then I did theater in high school, and I did all these different arts. And like I said, I found that film combined them. But at the same time, I fell in love with movies when I was like 5 or 6. My dad showed me Star Wars, and I went,
nice.
wow. Not
Yeah.
only by the story, but also, like, that's when I started going, like, okay, but how did they do this? Like, I know they did this, but like, how?
Yeah.
How did they figure this all out?
Yeah. You took
So,
it another step
like,
further. You didn't just see it as a piece of
absolutely.
entertainment. You're like, no, artistically, like, how was this achievable? Yeah.
And that's one of the joys of filmmaking. But
Yeah.
I made my own Lego, like, stop motion films for a while, and I was always making something. But then in high school, I kind of fully realized, and I got back into making short films, and it's been this craziness since then.
Yeah, for sure. No, I call it an elusive career. That's something that I mentioned to my guests, because it is like it's there and then it's not, and then it's like a lot of catching up and wait. People don't realize the grueling delayed gratification we have to experience in trying to cultivate these projects, develop them, get them going, and then actually executing on them. So yeah, it's such a grind, and I'm really remiss, like, not remiss, sorry, I just meant to say, like, the fact that your father it showed you films, and Star Wars particularly. That's something my father did. So he showed me Star Wars. I didn't really get the same effect, I'll be honest with you, with the originals, only because I was watching them on a 32-inch TV, and I just maybe in the environment I was in, or the setting, I just maybe was a rambunctious kid. I couldn't really sit still and pay attention to it, because I was an avid moviegoer, right? I just, for some reason, didn't really hit me as hard. And then it wasn't
Yeah.
until my dad brought the family to watch Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. And that one, for me, I was 10 years old at the time when it came out, really hit me, like, it blew me away. And I still consider it one of my favorite films. And I know people will argue, especially the film community, and maybe even yourself, like, they're not that well done, they're flawed. And that may be so. Like, I'll
Nah,
agree with you,
I
right?
love Revenge of the Sith. I
Perfect, perfect.
adore Revenge of the Sith.
Right? So like,
Don't get the wrong idea. I love it.
bro, that one for me, I don't know what it is. It's one of the most rewatchable films for me, and especially the Star Wars films. Like when I watch it and Hayden Christensen's performance, like I remember as a kid, I wanted to be like Anakin Skywalker. Like it was so badass to me. Like again, I was 10 years old, right? And people might say,
Yeah.
yeah, you get older. And I've talked to a lot of nerds, like, oh, you get older and you realize you're a kid, you didn't know any better. But it really is the same. Like it hits me hard. Like it's like I just it reminds me of when I was back when I was 10 years old and just captivated by the storytelling. I really believe that there's something fascinating about the the darkness of it. So yeah, like that to me when you mentioned Star Wars, it was very similar experience and something I can attest to.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you have the same. I feel like it's that way for a lot of people,
The same
and that's why I
background.
still love it. And that's I always revisit it, and it's that whole franchise had such an impact. So I appreciate George Lucas so much.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And going forward with regards to like filmmaking and you pursuing it, who were your greatest inspirations, either from your personal life or from notable creatives in the entertainment industry that served as an influence in your style of storytelling?
In terms of like creatives, my biggest influence of all time is Steven Spielberg. Like
Oh,
he
nice.
is like people that know me know that I will not shut up about him.
Okay, okay.
B- it's something about his not only the subject matter of his films, which I enjoy a lot. Sci-fi is
Of
my
course.
genre, but it's also his style. It's him as a person.
Right.
I really look up to him, and he was, I think, the first filmmaker aside from George Lucas that I really went like, okay, this is the filmmaker behind, and just really just got into how did he make this? What's his process? I was lucky enough to meet him actually on the set of West Side Story, which is like one of the
Oh
best
wow.
days of my life.
Were you
It was
acting?
incredible.
Were you acting
I
or like
wasn't.
being?
I
Oh,
wasn't. A friend and I found out where they were filming,
oh, nice.
and just stopped by the set, which was already cool in and of
Yeah,
itself.
of course. Yeah.
But then meeting your biggest inspiration, and then he's the nicest guy of all time, most down to earth. Like we talked for a couple of minutes. He is just like the
Doesn't realize
nicest
he's a
guy.
legend.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
which is so rare,
Yeah,
so
yeah, of
rare.
course, of course.
He is so humble, and like when me and my friend said we were filmmakers, his face just lit up. Like you could tell he cares. He really does about young filmmakers, and
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
it
Because at one
was
time
incredible.
yeah, I'm sure you know his story, right? Like they came with a documentary about it. He was watching Lawrence of Arabia as a kid, or maybe he was our age, and he was like, I can't be a filmmaker. Like I can't make something as, significant. And that to me touches my heart because it's like that's what I argue to everybody that's pursuing their passions, especially the arts. It's like at one time, Steven Spielberg was not Steven Spielberg. It was just a kid.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just some guy with that name and that wanted to be a filmmaker, right? So until he proved himself, obviously, and that's with anything in life. But people don't realize that. People think like, oh, but he had the talent. He had and I'm like, who said? You don't think that there was someone along that way that said like, prove it, kid? Like everyone nowadays will say that too, right? Like I have the talent. I can make a film. Look at you and I, right?
Yeah.
But what I mean to say is like, yeah, that's where I guess that humble nature comes in. Is like why he would look out for aspiring filmmakers like ourselves, right? And encourage you to keep pursuing your dreams because you could be and most likely could be, right, like the next great filmmaker. What I often tell my friends and my colleagues is you guys forget like this generation is done. Like they're getting older, right? Like they're not going to be around forever. Like who's going to replace them? Who's going to take over the new cinematic era? And especially in this dire time, right? Like with cinema and a lot of people commenting on the death of it.
Oh my
um,
God, that's
you know what
that's
I mean?
true.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know. Seeing your work that you have a strong passion for great films, right? Like artistic films.
absolutely.
Um, so like what I'm saying is like you have that desire, right? To be part of that generation that could change, revolutionize the whole industry.
Absolutely. It's definitely ultimately my goal is just to tell the best story.
Exactly.
That's what it always comes down to.
Always
But
breaking it
I would
down. Yeah.
love to like my end goal is to be able to influence someone the way that Spielberg and Lucas
Right.
influenced me. But my other big inspiration is my dad because he really helped cultivate my love for movies and he constantly supported my art and he passed away when I was 9. So
Oh,
um it hit even more, and after his death that's when I fell in love with movies just to a even like higher degree, because
Right.
I found comfort through them, and I found comfort through telling my own stories, and that's something that he would enjoy when I would tell him stories. So like film is even more deeply rooted because of that. And every film I do, I think, would he like it, and stuff like that. And I think he would.
No,
He
for
loves
sure.
sci-fi, so he kind of held my hands and showed me how incredible film could be, and I owe everything to him for that.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, and that's why we do this profession, right? Like people might ask, like it's so unconventional and it's not guaranteed. Sometimes it's not even safe. But we do it because it's bigger than ourselves, right? And just
Absolutely.
hearing like the passing of your father, like it makes sense to me, like why you would chase after your dream even more. It's kind of like you're living um through your father's memories, right? Every time you pick up a camera or anytime you express a story in motion pictures, it's like you said, right? Like sci-fi genre was something that he had an affinity for. So every time you make something that is related to that genre or a film entirely, um, it always like keeps that memory alive of him, right? So that's such a beautiful sentiment. I love that. And like even for myself, like I just chase this dream every day because I just I've always wanted to, see myself go through with it. It's something that I wanted since I was a little boy, like, to be in the movies and be part of the whole creative process, the experience. And obviously, as you get older, it gets tougher because people tell you, like, real life gets in the way of bills and things like that. And there's a lot of politics involved. But I made it this far, and I'm going to keep going, and that's what keeps me going, right? It's like you were saying, it's
Absolutely.
doing it for something that's bigger than you, right? And I'm doing it for my younger self, like to prove to him that like it can be done. And it's almost like every time someone tells me it can't be, I just keep pushing myself forward.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah,
great. I love that.
thank you.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. And it's funny because we're always sharing our similarities, but I bring up this a lot, and this is where we and I would differ. Quentin Tarantino is my kind of like go-to, my hero, for the
Yeah.
same reasons as like not only his filmography, but just what he represents. And I'll get into that more. Basically, what I always say on this podcast is he's like the rebel, the underdog. Like no one
Yeah.
knew him. He had no connections in the business, but he had talent and he had an imagination that stretched far beyond people could conceptualize. And he made it happen. You know what I mean? And like
Absolutely.
I look at him because I never went to film school, man. I never had anyone remotely in film in my family or friends, no one at all, like bare bones dry. But I would watch his work and I would like listen to his interviews and just how he would speak. And he would always say the lines, if you're that passionate about making films, you can't help but make a good one. You know what I mean? And I didn't go to film school. I went to films. When he says things like that, it just takes me to another world and it just satisfies that part of me that says, I can do this. I can make it happen. So I wanted to throw that out there because I respect Spielberg a lot. I love him. And I grew up with a lot of his movies. Obviously, a lot of us did. You watch his filmography and just how much he's reinvented himself over the decades that he's been in the business is remarkable, right? Like he's just
Yeah.
you know what I mean? He goes from like Jaws to Close Encounters, Schindler's List. Like if you watch Schindler's List, I'm like, is that the same
It's one of my
filmmaker?
favorites.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It's
It's odd to say
incredible.
like that being a favorite movie, you know what I mean? But the filmmaking behind it, like the craft, you just respect it. Like it's such a beautiful film, the way it was constructed. Saving Private Ryan is another one, right? So just
That's what I like a
genius.
lot too,
Yeah.
is that dichotomy between his stories. That's something I chase too, because
Right.
I love sci-fi, but I also love telling stories in the real world, and he does that so well. And a lot of people doubted him. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, you can't make a serious movie. You can't make The Color Purple. You can't make
I remember
Schindler's
that.
List."
Yeah.
But I think it's so powerful that he went along. And the biggest thing that you should always trust as an artist, I think, is your intuition. That's something that I've always done, is just trusting your gut, and also
Oh
knowing
yeah.
though when to reach out to others for feedback,
Yeah.
and when to trust them and who to trust, because you can't trust everyone's gonna have feedback on
No.
art. But the ultimately you need to just like listen, like, and deep down, where am I going, where,
Hmm.
like, what am I, like, Spielberg has a great quote where he's um like, the greatest things always whisper, they never shout. you know, like you have to listen to that whisper. So that's something that I always incorporate.
Yeah, that's actually a beautiful quote. I remember that quote when he said that. And then he said something like, "Dreams are not in front of you; they come from behind," or something. Uh, so yeah, remarkable man for sure. And just hearing you describe him, like his story, it's true. Like Color Purple, Jaws, everyone was always giving him a hard time on the films that were ended up becoming milestones, and quite remarkably so. Like because we were speaking of Schindler's List. I remember in that documentary, he kind of like pulled himself back a bit. He went a little bit soft, as they would say, on the Color Purple, like the subject matter involved.
Yeah,
And the way he approached Schindler's List, he was like, I can't make that same mistake again, especially like, um, the respect, it would be a disrespect to my Jewish heritage, right? So when I heard that, I'm like, this is a filmmaker, you know what I mean? This is an auteur, as I would call it.
absolutely.
This isn't a for hire director, right? Like that's how
Except
I feel.
I'd
Yeah.
say Spielberg isn't an auteur because auteur is kind of like author. You have to be writer
Yeah,
director,
yeah,
and
you're right about
Spielberg
that.
hasn't
Yeah.
written a lot, but he is an underrated screenwriter. The three films that he's written are incredible.
Which,
So
yeah,
I
refresh me on that. What has he written?
he wrote the only film he's written by himself is Close Encounters, and
Okay.
then he wrote AI, artificial intelligence, based off of Kubrick's original story treatment that he went through five writers with, and then the most recent one is The Fablemans last year with
Oh
Tony
wow.
Kushner.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and I heard great reviews. I think at the Toronto International Film Festival, it won People's Choice Award, which is
oh
the
yeah,
top prize
you
there.
got to
Yeah,
see it. You'll
yeah. No,
like it.
I saw a snippet of it, like just scrolling through Instagram on the Explore page.
Yeah,
I can't remember the actor's name, but I think he plays like the grandfather or the uncle, and he gives a whole speech about being an artist and how if you succeed, you'll be treated like a god, like in glory kind of thing. And then along the lines of, but it's like a lion's mouth and it can eat you up at any time. Like I don't, I'm butchering it, but it just, any artist watching that, anyone chasing something that's bigger than them, as I was just describing, knows like that whole speech really hits you hard. So yeah,
absolutely.
definitely looking forward to watching that because yeah, I heard it's like loosely or greatly inspired by his life. I'm not sure the details, but that's basically some of the notes I've gotten on it. And yeah, man, like he's a fantastic filmmaker, and thank you for correcting me on that with the auteur because you're right. Like he hasn't written a lot, um, and that's why I think I lean more towards Tarantino, is
Mm,
because for me he's like a badass. He's like he writes and he directs his own films. You know what I mean? And that's an anomaly. Like that's someone like that's very unique. That doesn't need another writer to come in or like any notes from the studio. You have to be an exceptional talent, a generational talent, but it's still possible. And that's what it reminds me, right? It's like you can write and direct films and create this brand where it's like you're bigger than the actors that are in the film. You know what I mean? It's like the eighth film by Quentin Tarantino. Like it's like we're not going to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because DiCaprio's in it. We're seeing it because Tarantino made it. Like that's how I perceive it. Would you agree?
no, it's incredible how much that I've kind of grown out of my Tarantino stage.
Okay, I understand.
Because I used to be super into him when I still love Inglorious Bastard. That's one of my favorite movies
Right,
ever.
right.
But like I sort of went through a trajectory. Like I started with your average childhood fare, and then moved to more like Tarantino, Scorsese, and
Of
then I
course.
started to venture out a little bit more into silent stuff, foreign stuff, and I think that made me. Because sometimes I'd watch some of the films that influenced him and so on, but I'm still a fan, but I'm not the hugest fan anymore. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Daniel,
No, no, no. It's all good.
but I still really like
Yeah.
his films, and I'm
No, no,
excited
no.
for.
Yeah.
Is it the 10th film or ninth film? I
I
think it's the
think
10th,
I
right?
think he's working on his 10th, or he's hoping to have a 10th and then retire. That's what he was saying. I don't think Once Upon a Time was his 10th.
No, it wasn't. I think it was
No,
ninth.
because the Hateful Eighth was his eighth. Because that's what was funny. Like it was ironic. No, I understand what your point, and to be honest, like I like Inglorious Bastards, Django Unchained, even Hateful Eight, like that era for me, because those were the films I watched in theaters, like I grew up with, kind of thing. I was old enough, I mean, to appreciate it. Those for me were like Tarantino's films. You know what I mean? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I wasn't really too crazy about, even though it had a lot of tropes from Tarantino. It was very Tarantino esque, so that's what I kind of
Yeah.
admired. Like the trailer for me was like badass. Like that's something, the trailer alone did it for me. Like I love the music and the way it was all put together. But nevertheless, like I digress. Pulp Fiction, True Romance. I know he didn't direct that, but again, the writing behind it, Reservoir Dogs, I just look to that. And because I'm a writer myself and I write my films and I direct them, I look to him as a mentor. So I love that, you and I share an affinity for significant filmmakers, and I respect Spielberg as much as you respect Tarantino. And that's what it is, right? It's like taking the strengths and the greatest qualities from all these filmmakers and being taught, how you can reach their level or go beyond.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So, like I was mentioning before, your outstanding filmography is a work of art that cannot be unnoticed. And upon viewing your short films, I began to realize common themes displayed within your stories, including oppression and perseverance. The first two films, The Cross-Universe Telephone Service and Celluloid Dreams, utilized the backdrop of the science fiction genre to implement a commentary on political, social, and economic issues. Why did you decide to tell these stories with this genre and explore such subject matter?
Of course, I've always loved science fiction. But the thing with me was it was always hard for me to justify doing a science fiction film because of how much it took. And for the longest time, I was kind of like, okay, but I can't make a science fiction film. I don't have the budget. I don't have the this or that. And my first one that I ever did was even in high school. I made this massive 20-minute sci-fi movie, and that kind of proved to me, okay, I can do this. It may not be the most incredible. It's not like it was Aliens, but I was still able to make something that I was proud of, and it taught me, okay, I can do this. So I love science fiction, though, because of how it reflects our world. A lot of people like science fiction because it's cool and there's aliens and crazy landscapes
Right.
and super cool characters, and I love every aspect of that. But to me, the best science fiction is always science fiction that can basically explore the future with themes of the present and reflect our world. That's my favorite, and that's why I chose to tell the stories within the science fiction genre, because both of them are, especially Cross Universe, I just wanted to take a workplace comedy a little bit and
Yeah,
put
it
it
was.
inside a science fiction
Yeah.
genre. I was like, I hadn't really seen that. I want to see that explored. How would it change? How would it be similar? So my cousin and I wrote that together. My cousin Isaac, who I also
Awesome.
wrote Here Today with, and
Nice.
and I wouldn't be able to do it without him. He's an incredible writer, and with Cross Universe, we were throwing around crazy ideas, and it was a blast. It really felt like coming home to making those Lego Star Wars stop motion movies.
Oh yeah, I love that you just mentioned Lego. I think not every artist, but I noticed a pattern of creatives that I speak to on this podcast and off the podcast that have an affinity for Legos or some sort of childhood nostalgia. Man, I miss those Lego sets. They're so damn expensive.
They've gotten
Right?
crazy.
Yeah, like they just know they're that good and like they've made a brand for themselves. But I'm telling you, man, when I become rich, I should say manifest. No.
You're gonna buy out the whole Lego store?
Yeah, no, I'll just buy a set and just build it. Like I just like yeah, because there's crazy sets going for like thousands of dollars, and it's like I would actually sit for a week or a few days. It would usually take me only a day, but these sets look like they take a long time. And just listen to a podcast and build them. Oh my god, I'm getting excited just thinking about them. But that's awesome, man. Thank you for that insight on like the science fiction genre. Because again, it was very well done, both of them, right? And I like how unique and distinguished they were. You were describing, one was more like a dark comedy. It felt sometimes at moments like a dark comedy because they're like with the score being used and the undertones, it just felt a little bit grim because it's a daunting workplace. But then at the same time, I like with Celluloid Dreams, like how it tackled a lot of, like I said, social issues, political issues. And it honestly felt very inspired by The Giver. I don't know if you read that novel.
I actually haven't. I like
Okay.
people have said that, and I need to get up. What's crazy is like the big inspiration for that is two short films. One is La Jetée, which is this incredible science fiction film, only with pictures. It's not video. It's told only through pictures from the 1960s by Chris Marker that I love. The other short film is Anima, that was made by Paul Thomas Anderson for Tom York. And then the third and probably most obvious is Blade Runner and that whole universe.
Yes.
So
Blade Runner vibes for sure.
I didn't read The Giver. those are my main things I pulled
Inspirations,
from
source,
for
yeah, source of
yeah.
yeah. Blade Runner. I'm happy that you mentioned that because that's what the vibes I was receiving. And yeah, The Giver is a novel I read in elementary school. Basically, it's the same concept, similar in the premise of the fact that he can't see color, and he doesn't hear music, and he goes to this wise old sage of the community, and he's instructed to like learn the ways of the past, like through these memories, and that's how it like almost felt, right? Because everything was black and white, and he was like, I'm starting to see
Absolutely.
color now, and it changes his reality, and that's what happens. Like the guy, I wouldn't say goes crazy, but becomes so enlightened that he just everything is repulsive, right? Like in his community.
Yeah.
So like yeah, like I loved it. It felt very Big Brother 1984.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
and I really wanted to explore artificial intelligence because that's something that
Yes,
like
yes.
fascinates me. And I shot that like a year ago or so, last April. And like how much has changed with AI from then to now is actually insane. And
Oh yeah.
I could have never predicted it. Because you were starting to see stuff last year, but like really at the beginning of this year, this fall, is when stuff really started happening. Like Dali got so complex and stuff like that makes me go like, okay, like Celluloid Dreams, I was able to explore something that's now becoming even more of a topic, which I was happy about.
Right.
And that's something I want to continue exploring because I think it'll get only more and more relevant to us. And
Yes.
I think it is just
Especially with
one of the
Elon Musk
most,
around.
oh yeah, with
Yeah.
the whole like voices and everything. It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
Starlink or whatever it's called. Yeah.
That's his
Neuralink.
web
Is it
service.
Neuralink? I can't remember. Yeah, neural. I don't know. Yeah, excuse me for my interjection.
Neuralink, I believe, is the
The correct
brain.
term, right? Why was I thinking Starlink?
Starlink is his satellite
Oh, okay,
program.
okay, my bad. Well, I got something right. It was just a made up name. That's awesome, man. So, yeah, I want to know because you're speaking of these films, and again, I'm just like reflecting on them, like going back, my experience watching them. The first one, especially the cross universe telephone service, that one was quite remarkable because the visual effects being used. And I want to know what these two separate films, like the creative process, what was that like in developing them?
They were very different, like
Okay,
complete polar opposites in terms of making them.
right,
Cross Universe, I said I wrote with my cousin and
right,
then we shot it. But there was so much pre-production because everything with the screen, we had to pre-visualize the screen. So we made a diagram, we planned everything out beforehand. There was a lot of aspects that we had to. The production design was a lot. The lighting, which I did, it was very, very thought out because the lighting kind of tells the story with the
of
red and
course.
green
Yeah,
and the blue of the holograms. And that's what I realized with the visual effects is if you want good visual effects, you need to have good lighting that matches the visual effects. And that's
right,
what really made them prosper. But the real like the real bulk, I'd say like 70% of the filmmaking of 50% maybe of the filmmaking of the cross universe telephone
right.
service was in post. The post
Huh.
process was super rigorous. So I edited it and then I did visual effects with my super talented friend Max Lin. My incredible sound designer Sonny Arno did a fantastic job and we played around with a lot of different stuff. And then
Nice.
Luke did the score.
Yeah.
And then we had all the voice performers. I was one of them, friends. So it was a crazy process. But once everything came together, it was like, wow. And with the visual effects, I can't take all credit because Max really did a lot of the astonishing ones. But that was my first foray really into visual effects. And I've been doing it ever since. And doing that, I think, was the point that I realized like to the highest degree as a filmmaker, okay, you could do like really high production value stuff.
Right.
And there's software that's so easy to use that you could make these effects that like I think of some of my new biggest influences are the Daniels that did Everything Everywhere All at Once. They made it with After Effects. So it's like there are no
Oh
more
wow, they made all
excuses.
those effects not themselves, or they hired
Oh,
they outsourced.
yeah, no, it was 8 people. 8 people
Really? So it
for
was a
hundreds
true
of
like
VFX.
indie film. Like
Oh
because I
yeah.
didn't read the backstory behind that. That's crazy. I still
Oh
have
yeah,
yet to watch
they
it.
graduated from my school. That's where they met. So I
Oh,
had the
awesome.
chance to meet them, and they are
Awesome.
incredible, nice filmmakers. But yeah, for Celluloid
Yeah.
Dreams, it was so different because it was on film. It was for a 16 millimeter class. super blessed that Emerson has that opportunity. They actually have the largest collection of Bolex cameras in the world. They have like
Right.
60 or 80 Bolexes. So they have a bunch of classes, and this was my final. And I was originally only going to shoot on black and white, but I
Right.
asked about color, and then I kind of crafted this story around that. And I usually storyboard every frame of my movies. That's like my comic book,
Same.
past
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
through. I love it. It's such a great process. And I did across the universe every single frame storyboarded. Celluloid Dreams, not a single one.
Wow.
We went out, my talented DP Alexis, we went out into the field, and just like a lot of it was finding good locations. Like the locations and the story was always kind of evolving. We never wrote a script until after filming, actually. There was an outline, but after the edit, we kind of put together the dialogue specifically. The story, of course, was there. It wasn't like, we were like, I don't know what will happen next. But it was a very different process. And with 16 millimeter, I can't do my normal, like, I love moving the camera and quick cut. It's like, you can't do that as much. So you really have to think about the frame. You have to think of the frame.
Of course.
So it created a very different feel, and I also edited that, and that was such an interesting editing process, just to put something together like that, and to explore something that it was very different for me. It's pretty experimental. It's a little dark, and for a long time, people told me like you can't really do that, like because my earlier films are a lot more, I don't know, like innocent might be the wrong word, but they're fun. Like I don't mind having fun with a lot of people at film school, like it has to be a drama, it has to say something, and that is incredibly important. But I also just want to make some fun movies. So for this was a very big switch for me, and I'm really proud of it and excited for everyone to see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, so it hasn't been released. Like, I got the special treatment.
You got this for all three.
Nice.
I have 9 films that have not released yet.
Oh, wow. And you've made them over the course of how long?
Like 2 years, 2.5.
Oh, wow. So they just,
I always get too busy, and then
Yeah.
I can't really, but I'm nearing a point where I'm going to have some more time. So by next year, I hope to release all of them.
Yeah, no, if you have 9, that's crazy, man. Like, good on you too.
Thank you.
Wow, no, because I'm just like thinking myself as a filmmaker, like assembling, like how do you have the time? Like, is it just kind of like once a month or every other month, like you're just kind of banging them out?
It depends. Like some of them
Yeah.
were for classes, for applications, for projects.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But some were just, I want to make something. It definitely varied project to project. That like I never, like 2 years ago, I wasn't like, I'm gonna make 9 short films, guys.
Yeah.
I kept on like 2 of them are web series episodes that I directed, and I wasn't gonna say no, I won't direct that because I haven't finished this. So it was a lot of like, I have a new thing that I need to do. And also like nowadays, a lot of my films have like a lot of post, like Cross Universe took a while in post. I still have to do a little bit of visual effects for it. So there's all these different factors, but I'm super excited for everyone to see them, because my last film was like 2 years ago or so. I did release a web series episode that I directed,
nice.
but I'm excited for everyone to see the films we're talking about.
Well, you definitely have content, and that's something that I admire, because I'm all about content and putting things out there. And as filmmakers, sometimes like we struggle because what's our next project kind of thing. But you got covered for 9 films. You know what I mean? But that's great, right? Like that's part of the journey, and I'm so happy that people are going to be experiencing these films like the way I did. I hope so. You know what I mean? And if they don't, they can come talk to me. But no, you were mentioning the Bolex camera. That kind of stuck out to me because I don't know how to use it. And our good friend Tyler Seller, I believe.
Yeah.
You know him. So he's a good friend of mine, and he actually wanted me to ask you this question, as do I want to know the answer. How did you become so adept in using the Bolex camera, and would you recommend it to other filmmakers who are interested in shooting it on film?
I would absolutely recommend it.
Yeah.
I'll say shooting on film is it's a different process. It's like you need to know what you're getting into, because number one, it's expensive. Every single second you're running that camera should equate to money. Like, you know, like the money, the sound of the camera clicking is the sound of coins drop. No, I'm joking, but
yeah.
Like it's definitely you do realize how important everything is and how important getting the shot is. So I think that creates a different dynamic. I'd absolutely it's so, I think, essential to learning in some ways. And if I could create my own like film curriculum, I would include film. Like I've been in love with film photography for a while, so I think
Right.
that's why it was easier for me to get into motion picture film. Just because I was used to exposing film and seeing how film reacts. But like I think like I really do owe a lot to my teacher, Professor Amalia, and the entire Emerson department,
Right.
because that class taught me so much about the Bolex and what to do, and personal questions I had for him, and so on. That really helped. It like you got to worry about everything with film,
Yeah.
but in the end it's so worth it, because like I mean I've had some roles that haven't developed, luckily not on Celluloid Dreams, but there's so
Oh,
many
thank
things that
you.
you could run into. And like I make it sound bad, but like once you get that shot, like one shot is the sunset near this place in Boston called the Esplanade. It's like this
Right.
purple sky. You
Yeah.
can't really get that with digital. Like you can in color grading, but there's something about how light interacts with the film, especially with sunrises and sunsets, that
Like
is
you're capturing it
incredible.
raw. Like there's no filter. There's
Absolutely.
no, like you're capturing it in the moment. Yeah. And
And
I,
you should
yeah.
totally shoot on film. You would love
No, I think I would get
it.
a kick. Honestly, I've been saying it for
Your boy
years.
does
Like,
it.
if I,
Tarantino's like the biggest
I know, I was just gonna
spokesperson
say that
for
guy, like, it refuses to pick up a digital camera, but yeah, I guess because of like our generation, like we're not. I've never picked up a film camera. Like I don't even know how to develop it myself if I wanted to, right? But I know it's possible, and I want to start small, taking like maybe even if it's just like photos or doing little short clips. But it's definitely a novelty and something that I wish to pursue, and that's why I had to ask you, because I'm like, yo, this guy's like shooting on a Bolex camera, and I'll be honest, I'm a little bit embarrassed saying this. I didn't know what a Bolex camera was, so when I looked it up, I was like, and I saw it in your hands. I think it was on your Instagram. You have a photo with it, no?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Um, I was laughing. I was like, yo, this is a heavy duty camera. Like this is like OG filmmakers. You know what I mean? Like back in
This
the day.
it is the OG. It's like the camera when people
It's such
think
an
of like
icon. Yeah, exactly.
with the turret. It has the three lenses.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
cool. That was really cool,
Yeah,
I
with the
will
three
say.
lenses, yeah. And you just switch them, like you just that's
It's
crazy.
really cool. You don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah. I
swap
love
out
that.
lenses, but
No, I love that, man. I love that. Yeah, we'll keep being curious, and thank you for advising me on that. I'm gonna check it out,
of
as
course.
should other filmmakers if you can get your hands on it. So yeah, contrary to the first two short films we discussed, Here Today, another short film that you made, was not of the science fiction genre, nor did it explore similar subject matter found in the cross universe cell phone service and celluloid dreams. From my understanding, this short film almost felt like a personal depiction showcasing your own struggles in achieving success within the arts. What was your intention with this film, Here Today?
Here Today was really difficult for me to write because I hadn't made a film that was so personal in a long time. The
Right,
last one was my last like really big film that I released called Filmmaker, which was about me
right.
struggling to become a filmmaker, and like you said, people saying, "Oh, like you can't do this," like you that
Yeah,
whole internal struggle of a filmmaker as I grew up. And that was hard, but this was even harder because I for a long time I've wanted to tell a story inspired by my own with loss, but now really felt like a perfect time, and so and I've always wanted to do more of a dramatic film, but it was hard for me to live in that world, because when
right.
when you make a film, you live in that world. When I was making
Of
Cross
course.
Universe, I was thinking about aliens and celluloid dreams, like what acting like a robot would be
Yeah,
and so it was hard for me to really go, okay, I'm gonna do this. But my cousin really helped me. It's definitely inspired by my struggles artistically, but like that was a part of it. And I feel like it's hard for me to make something without a
yeah.
character with that's an artist or with Pat. But the big part is my father's death, which
Yes.
like had such a big effect on my life, and I thought even more so by telling a film inspired by it. It like film, it keeps things forever, and my
Yeah.
dad got me into film. like all of that coming together, I thought it would make a really special project, and one that people could relate to or find comfort in if they're experiencing loss. So I wanted, and the other thing is I wanted to really tell the story of a character. A lot of my
Yes.
films are more concept driven, but I really wanted to tell a story of a character and work with an incredible actor, which is the lead, Antonio Gordon, who is just like outstanding.
Yeah.
Every take, just I'm blown away by. He does
On
little
point.
things, little
Yeah.
facial, like
Yeah.
because a lot of it, there's not a lot of dialogue. There's only phone calls. Like so, he's really emoting, and to be able to have that type of relationship and really develop a character instead of a concept was really fantastic.
No, that's great. And you know, the best stories are the ones that we know. And I often say that, right?
Absolutely.
For creatives that are looking to what story to tell next, is go after the one that is personal, right? That you can kind of like express yourself and vicariously live through these characters. For me, that's what I've been doing in every film I've been working on since, in some shape or form, whether it's one character to all of them or a scene, a setting, just finding ways, whether it's an influence, a personal experience, to integrate it. And that's why when I was watching it, I immediately picked up. I'm like, wow, this is very different from the other two you sent me. You know, because I thought you were like a Neil Blomkamp kind of thing, like doing this whole like social commentary using sci-fi. And then this comes out, and I'm like, oh, this is my kind of filmmaking. You know, it's like very dramatic and heartwarming, and you know, sending a message.
Thank you.
And
No,
yeah,
and I've always been about exploring and
yeah,
constantly evolving. Like one of my biggest inspirations is Bowie, and he has this great quote where he's like, when when you feel like you're too deep beneath the water, keep on going a little bit deeper, and that's where you'll really find, like, you have to be a little uncomfortable. So throughout my
I
films, like
love
I've
that.
made
Yeah.
a fantasy, horror, a film noir, sci-fi, dramas, comedies, and it really helped me. I love genre. I want to tell
Yeah,
stories with genre, but it's so useful to be able to experiment with different genres and
yeah,
then see what frame, like the genre is the framework.
of
Like
course.
this, the story doesn't have to be tied to the genre. So, but also there's a lot of beauty in stripping away the genre and just focusing on your character and your real world, which I did with Here Today.
Yeah, of course. One of the things that stood out to me too from this film was the cinematography. Not to discount the other two films, but this cinematography for me, I really enjoyed. Um, you know, the landscapes of New York City, and the way it was shot, with various different angles, and having the city be almost act as a character next to the main character, right? And I want to know, like, how were you able to shoot many of these scenes, if not all of them, in New York City?
So I gotta give a shout out because the person that like deserves the most like praise is just Eitan Ehrlich. He's the
Okay.
cinematographer and he also produced the film. And he is just such an incredible cinematographer.
Love.
His visual eye is incredible, but he's also so technically experienced, even more than me in some ways. Like he's outstanding. So a lot of how we were able to do that was working with him
Right.
because since he was both producer and cinematographer, he was able to really have a good idea of how much we needed to shoot, what we needed to shoot. And like I walked around and found locations and I've been working in the city for the last year, so I was been keeping my eye out and oh, I really like that place. And finding the right ones for the right scenes was difficult, but the main way we were able to film at all those, like, because it was crazy, we only
Yeah.
filmed for about 3 days, like 2.5 maybe, and it was a marathon. Like some days it was like going location because there's 13 locations, 25 scenes, so it was running all over. And Aton had a car and we drove to each location. Sometimes he'd have to circle the block with the car. I'm so sorry, Aton,
Yeah.
because like
That's
he'd have
crazy.
to like find parking. It was craziness. Like shooting in the city is no joke,
No,
especially
yeah,
transportation's the big thing with the city, is getting from location to location. But
yeah,
um yeah, like it it was just knowing where to film. Really, I always went there first to kind of get a vibe for the area. Like, would it be too noisy? Would there be too many people? like what, and then I even with my phone did pre-visualization with different lenses on my phone, and so okay,
Right.
so we were so prepared. That's how we were able to do it, because we got in and we got out, because we knew we just couldn't like stay there for hours and have a big, you know, setup. We usually just put the camera on the Ronin and headed to the field.
Nice.
I'm super proud of, and thank you for saying that like the city is a character in the film, because that's something that we were always trying for, and
Yeah,
it's such a
yeah,
big part of Miles's story. So I'm glad
yeah.
that you felt that,
I
because
say,
I'm from
yeah.
Long Island, so
Oh, okay, nice.
New York City is my backyard,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
adore it. But for a long time, I was scared of like filming at actual locations. I think
Right, right.
across the universe, and my film Spellbound, which is about a witch, and There's a Face in My Tea, the noir. They were all with black backgrounds, so like I was able to really figure out my visual style and tell a genre story, but I wasn't able to get a ton of experience with actual locations.
Of
So
course.
the past year, I've been able to get out of my comfort zone, and I was really happy to be able to shoot at all these different locations, because locations really can just tie everything together, and really they're so important to a film.
No,
So
yeah, no, well said. And thank you so much for that beautiful description of like how this all unfolded, because
of
I was
course,
looking at, yeah, I was looking at New York City, and obviously been there multiple times being from Toronto. And first of all, I can highly relate to that whole concept you were explaining, New York City being your backyard, as is Toronto, right? I was born in the city, but moved out with my family, area called Vaughan, so it's just outside of Toronto. And yeah,
that's
essentially that.
exactly the same as me.
Yeah, right. And it's
That's
like,
that's so
yeah,
cool.
that's what I'm saying. It's like, and all my content, or most of it, is shot in Toronto. Like Lady of the Night, one of my recent short films, was shot in Toronto. So I know exactly what it is. For me, I was more of trying to figure out, was it like a run and gun kind of thing, or do you have permits at certain locations?
It was a lot of running and gunning,
Yeah, yeah, I believe
or
it.
using friends apartments, and yeah,
But
no,
even
it
on New York
was
City, like no one bothered you. Like no one said you can't shoot here, you can't do this. I'm not sure
no.
how it works over there. Like, because in Toronto, they don't really bother us too much, but there you will get people saying like, "Do you have a permit for the sidewalk?" Yeah.
Weirdly, the one time that happened, I was really young and it scared me, and it was at my town, in a
Okay.
park. But at filming in New York City, luckily, we were not bothered. A lot of locations were on the sidewalk or something, and New York has a really strict law with like you can film at most places on the sidewalk as long as you don't set down like a tripod.
Right.
Um, because that can trip people. So the main way we filmed was running and gunning with a Ronin, and that we were able to get really smooth shots and also change a lot of things
Nice.
really quick. So that was super beneficial. Not having to lug around a tripod and set it up and each leg and all that. That was, I think, the biggest way that we were able to film everything, not get in trouble, and get a great product.
That's awesome, man. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah,
Thank you.
like New York City, yeah, it's a beautiful city. And I wasn't sure like if you were from there, or you like moved all your crew there just to shoot something, but it makes
Imagine
sense.
that would
Yeah,
be
no, I know,
crazy.
but what an opportunity. Like we have big cities. Not only are they
Absolutely.
film hubs, but great set pieces for filmmaking, right? So we can't go wrong, and there can't be any yeah, there can't be any mistake for that. So I want to know, going forward, like which short film from the three we discussed um did you most enjoy making?
That's hard. It's kind of like
Yeah.
choosing a favorite kid a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
And each of them have like as much as I can think of the amazing things, I also can think of the hardships. And
Right,
sometimes the hardships on set, if there's so many, it makes the final product so rewarding.
right.
And that would be the case with Here Today, because it wasn't a difficult shoot, but there was a lot we had to think about, a lot we had to. It was a small crew, really like 3 people, and so that I think I'm most proud of. But the one I had the most fun with was Cross Universe, because I really got to play around and kind of make a story that I wish I could watch as a kid, like
Right.
that type of thing. And I got to just think like, since it's goofy, there's no like this is where reality is. It's like I could just with my cousin brainstorm incredible things, and some ideas were stupid, some were fun, and
Yeah.
that process was amazing. And finding that like you're a writer director, and I am
Right.
somewhat. I like story,
Yeah.
but I don't like the process of writing by myself. I love writing with Isaac, and I'd love to write with other writers, but I'm mostly a producer director. That's what in
Nice.
the future I'd like to become more of a
Right. Right.
producer director.
Nice.
So yeah, and then cross universe, everything coming together in the post, and that was really rewarding as well. And the visual effects were not fun.
Yeah.
Going frame by frame for
Can
800
imagine.
frames was not fun, but seeing everything come together and being on that set, it was a lot of fun. So that's kind of it's like a half answer. Most proud of here today, most fun, cross universe cell phone service.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I can see a lot of out of the three of them, that one having the most fun being put in. You know what I mean? Like or being received from it. What am I saying? It's kind of like you just see sometimes when you watch a film, almost get like a window into like what's happening behind the scenes. I got that feeling, right? That you guys had a engaging experience, and creativity is a risk at the end of the day. So I
Absolutely.
admire that you take that risk, and like as fellow filmmakers, we all admire, because we don't know whether these films are gonna like do well or how they're gonna come across. But that's the thing, right? Like I like that you said you kind of know your place, like you're a director producer and you enjoy writing, but you're not too fascinated with the whole writing process. You rather have someone work with you. And I can understand that, like staring at the blank page, it's daunting, it's grueling, even makes me nervous just thinking about it. But when it hits, and you just got to find your flow, right? But that's what I'm saying. It speaks to everyone differently, right? It's like us telling someone, why don't you want to be a director? Because there are people that love being a cinematographer, or they like being just the editor. And there's nothing
Absolutely. And
wrong
there
with
needs
that.
to be more of those people, because
Yes,
everyone
yes,
wants to be a
yeah.
director. And
100%.
I'm
100%.
a hypocrite because I want to be a director.
Yeah.
But it's also something that I've learned is it's also so important, regardless of your role, to always try to learn about other positions. While like directing is my dream, it's what I love most. I've also done cinematography on a lot of projects, and a lot of my professional experience is in post-production and editing. So all of that though makes me a better director. So that's some of my biggest advice, because a lot of directors will just be like, oh, I'm gonna wait for a great script to come
Yeah.
my way, or oh, I'm gonna wait until I can get this or get that.
Got
You
it.
got to go out and do it, and you got to go out and learn. It's so easy to learn about film nowadays. We are so blessed. 15 years ago, you would have to, 20 years ago, you'd have to shoot on film or video. You'd have to have crazy money. You'd have to go to film school. But just what you're watching this podcast on, like, there's just so much, and that's honestly how I've learned so much about it is through that. So
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like you're a self-starter, and you have a growth mindset. Like nothing's going to limit you. And that's what I took away from watching your films, right?
thank
Again, I
you.
don't just see it from face value, like it's a great film, wrap it up. I look at it as who's behind that camera. Like what's his thought process? What's he thinking right now? And for me, the visual effects was a huge accomplishment. For me, that was like tell reminding me that there's a possibility, right? Of
I'm glad.
like
Thank
you
you.
said, expanding your production value, right? Because if you notice a lot of the films I make, other than the fact that that's what I have an affinity for, right? A proclivity to tell dramatic stories. I'm also like refraining from telling stories with visual effects because I have no idea what I'm doing unless I find someone that's talented enough to do it. But you take that risk and say, no, let's write a story tailored, like that's going to require us to do visual effects. You go right in like headstrong, right? So like your friend was explaining, swim a little bit deeper, right? Take that risk because you never know.
I wish it
what's
was my
behind.
friend David Bowie.
Oh, sorry.
But
My bad. I was like my friend.
I
It
wish
sounded
that
like your
would
friend
be.
the way you said it.
To
Yeah.
me, he is a friend to me.
Okay, great. We're all friends here. But before we leave, I want to know, what passion project do you eagerly desire to make next?
That's hard. I definitely release the 9 that
Yeah,
I'm
like
working on
first step on your
is
agenda.
first step, but I really want to continue exploring genre. So a dream of mine, like some of my favorite movies are musicals, so I would love to try my hands at a musical, or like a western, or like just keep on. Genre really pushes me to you have to think of the genre, but also the story and how it
Of
fits.
course.
So that would be fun. But like the main And then of course there's a bunch of science fiction stories that are in my head. Some I know I don't have enough money for or
Right.
resources for, so
Right.
putting those away.
Yeah.
A big one is that I want is a documentary, which I really have not ever made. But my grandfather filmed a bunch of incredible Super 8 footage, starting on the day my mom was born in 19 blah 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 blah. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But the footage is incredible,
Nice.
and he's such an incredible person, and I miss him a lot. So I really want to make a documentary with that footage. So that's another project, and I'm always thinking of like I have notebooks everywhere. I have like 5, so it's like always writing down ideas, and it's hard for me to think next project because like as you could see, it's usually like next 3. So and I do freelance, so there's a lot of projects
Nice.
that I'm doing next with that.
Perfect.
But I'm always trying to like do something new and also trying to improve. I don't know if
Yes.
but like the biggest thing with me is like it's hard to look at your film from really far because
course.
we are like, especially when you're directing, you're writing, it is yours. It's your idea. You care a lot about it. And it's pretty much impossible to fully distance yourself and go, this is a good film, this is a bad film. Even if it's a great film, sometimes it's really difficult to admit.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I always look at is, have I improved? Like
Love
that to me is just the key. The key. It's like, okay, what can I do to make myself better at something? Not necessarily make the greatest film ever, because I think a lot of people start with that. But like, and you do want to make the best film ever, but you also want to be able to improve, especially at this level, because like,
Of course.
like it's so important. So I'm super excited to see how I grow with future projects, and I'm gonna always try to do something different, because to me that's like, as an artist, I've always kind of like, it's never been a straight path. I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that, and I really love it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a non-linear path, right? And it's just highly unpredictable, and that's why in a way we're drawn to it, for at least for me, right? It's kind of like, it's exciting
Absolutely.
and both terrifying, as Martin Scorsese would describe a film set. It's, you're excited to be there, but you're terrified it can go wrong in a second. But that's why I love what we do. You know, what I often tell people is, I want to do this profession, obviously, you know, because it's bigger than me, and for reasons for yourself. You know, you're doing it for your father and reliving those memories, and you know, telling his legacy through these stories, making his memories stay alive. But for me, it's kind of like, also, I want to do something that no one else can do, right? And people might say, well, Derek is a filmmaker like you, and I'm like, yeah, he is, but he's not me. My films are different than his. You know what I mean? And it's like, anyone could be like a marketing coordinator. Anyone could be, you know, a bank teller, let's say, right? And I know sound like I'm discounting those jobs, but hear me out. It's kind of like, the arts is something where you are what the uniqueness that you can bring to it. You know what I mean? You are what define it. It's not your employer, it's not your boss, it's not anyone else. So that's why I love this profession. It's that reminder that I am unique, I'm special. This is something that is coming from my imagination. And the more successful I am at that, proves to me that there is an audience that is willing to share that same idea, and also that passion for storytelling.
Absolutely. No, that's I relate completely, because with filmmaking, it's just it's such a unique art form, and it allows for so much. Like, one of my favorite quotes is Roger Ebert, where he says that like, movies are like a machine that generates empathy, and there truly is no other art form where you can get so much empathy and really you walk out of a theater and you just felt for that character. You're thinking about it on the way home. I've never felt that with a book or anything else.
Yeah.
And
same.
that just that feeling, and that's also what motivates me, is how will the audience think? And how will this affect them? How will that affect them? And it's just, it's, you know, being able to tell stories through your own lens, and stories that you care about, is so incredible about filmmaking, and that voice. But I'm also so interested in the collective voice, and there's something so special about starting with something and then one of your collaborators having an even better idea and knowing when to say yes or no to that idea. But sometimes my best idea, like the best parts of of the film are something that I came up with by someone saying, I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Maybe we should try this or that. And then just like putting together all of our ideas and then coming up with something beautiful at the end. Like that's incredible with filmmaking, and then still making it personal. It's incredible.
Yeah, incredible art form, and that's why we're here. That's why I believe we exist, because we're not going to make it die. We're not going to make it go away. The future is now with cinema, and it breaks my heart again. I said at the beginning of the podcast where people are saying cinema is dead, and you can't blame them. Like if you look at just the way things have been, but there is still great talent and talent to be seen. So
Absolutely.
on that note, want to tell you, like, I wish you all the best in your career.
Me too,
And
King.
yeah, I look forward to connecting and staying connected, and who knows, even collaborating, right?
Absolutely.
This profession and this platform, I should say, this podcast has proven to me that the world is very small. There's a lot of people that are like-minded, and they're just a phone call away. So on that note, like, thank you again, Derek Delson, for coming on the podcast and explaining your beautiful story of how you became a filmmaker.
Thank you so much for having me. And check out Daniel's amazing films as well. They're incredible.
Thank you. Means a lot coming from you too, I should say. All right. On that note, thank you again, Derek Delson, for coming on the podcast. Thank you, everybody else, for listening, and we'll talk soon.